I thought for one of the concluding messages at Summit University this summer session that you might like to have some teaching concerning the training of yourself. The training of yourself to be leaders, professionals, executives, teachers, those of you who can go back and organize groups and lead groups. And so I thought, where shall we draw the very simple outline of what makes people either successful or unsuccessful? So I chose to use a book that is very popular. In fact, almost anywhere you go today, you can find someone in a corner reading this book. It is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's by Stephen Covey. It is a wonderful book. I recommend it to you, and I ask that you should study it and attempt to repattern your life out of this formula. The formula is amazingly like the teachings of the Ascended Masters, but they are brought down to a very practical how-to on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to give you now a summary of the 7 habits of highly effective people with some comments. Stephen R. Covey is chairman of the Covey Leadership Center and the nonprofit Institute for Principle-Centered Leadership. Principle-Centered Leadership. His firm teaches personal and organizational leadership development worldwide. All of us can benefit from a little more knowledge about leadership. Of course, the first person we have to lead is ourselves. How do we lead ourselves? And so these are the 7 habits that he has formulated. The first habit, habit number 1, is to be proactive. That's one word, proactive. What does it mean to be proactive? The first and most basic habit of highly effective people is proactivity. You initiate. This entails principles of personal vision. Proactive people have both the initiative and the response ability. They have the ability to respond, to challenge, to organize. They have the ability to choose their responses to make things happen. Either you choose your responses in life or someone else will choose them for you. Highly effective people are driven by carefully selected and internalized values. Carefully selected and internalized values. I think you should have a section of your journal where you list what are your most important values, how you intend to embody them, how you intend to live them. What are your values? If someone would ask you that now, as I am asking you, what would your answer be? Would you fumble for words, speak of impracticalities and nebulous things, or could you give them a list of 5 points that you could say, these are my values, I stand by them, I live by them? Covey observes, until a person can say deeply and honestly, I am what I am today because of the choices I made yesterday, that person cannot say, I choose otherwise. Proactive people concentrate on the things that they can do something about, what Covey calls their circle of influence. This is such an important step. All of a sudden to say, all these things out here are out of my control, but I can work change where I am. I have influence here. I can make my voice count. I can work change. I can help people to understand that they have better options, that there are opportunities, and that they are within our reach and our grasp. So the approach is to change from the inside out, to be different, and by being different, to effect positive change in what's out there. change within and affect what's outside. People who have this focus on building character. They know what they mean by character. They are self-observant. And they know what kind of behavior and thoughts and feelings are without character. And so they work to eliminate the negatives and build strong character that can then withstand the opposition to their great goals in life. Honoring the commitments we make to ourselves and others is the essence and clearest manifestation of our proactivity. When I promise myself I will do something, and then I don't do it because I let other people take my time or interrupt my gait and where I'm going, I feel terrible. I feel terrible about myself that I decided to do something, but I didn't do it. And if I allow that to repeat, if I get a momentum on deciding to do something and then letting others take my time and space, pretty soon I'm building a momentum where I'm starting not to believe in myself, not to believe in my ability to do what I say I will do. If I can't do what I promise myself, how can I do what I promise others? Through self-awareness and conscience, we become conscious of areas of weakness and areas of talent that can be developed. Then we use imagination, that eye magic of the all-seeing eye of God, that third eye chakra. We use the imagination. How do you crank up your imagination? You literally have to pull the switch, turn on your third eye, and look through it as though you're looking through a vast telescope or a microscope or a window upon the world. You think of your third eye as a screen in which you can see anything anywhere, but on which most especially you can create, just like you might create on your Macintosh computer. You create by your vision. That is what is called imagination, or what Mark Prophet called eye magic. Seeing is believing, and believing is becoming what you see. So we use imagination and independent will to act on that awareness by making promises, setting goals, and being true to them. Part of the very first habit of being proactive is therefore being true to ourselves, so that we will not be false to any man. Until we come forward with that strength, that very firstness in our life of being true to ourselves, we cannot be true to anyone else. We have to know we can count on our being true to ourselves, then we will have the confidence to lead. This builds our integrity, makes us aware of our self-control, and gives us the courage and strength to accept more of the responsibility for our own lives. Because it is now becoming repetitive, we're building a strong momentum. I was able to do that. Now I know I can do this. Why, I've done this many times, so I can commit to doing it again. The habit of success breeds confidence, and success is being true to yourself. As we create strength of character, it moves us in a balanced way toward greater effectiveness. We know when we are effective, and we know when we are not effective. And we don't feel good about ourselves when we are not effective in precipitating our goals, our aspirations, in being successful in business, and being able to follow through on a committee assignment in a club that we belong to, and doing it right and making it be practical. We don't want to be ineffective chelas of the ascended masters. We don't want to be ineffective disciples of Jesus Christ. We take our vows in answer to his calls, but he gives us the wide freedom to determine how we will fulfill those calls that we have now agreed to embody. Working out the plan, the business plan of our responsibilities to life, whether they're spiritual or very physical, working out the plan is the most difficult part of the whole thing. Covey cites the pro-activist in Judeo-Christian tradition, Joseph, the son of Jacob and Rachel and the father of Ephraim and Manasseh. Covey relates the story that you all know. Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt by his brothers at the age of 17. It would have been easy for him to languish in self-pity as a servant of Potiphar, to focus on the weaknesses of his brothers and his captors, and on everything that he didn't have. But Joseph was proactive. He worked on himself, on what he could be, and within a short period of time he was running Potiphar's household. He was in charge of all that Potiphar had, because the trust was so high. He had established trust in his God, trust in himself, and therefore his superior trusted him. You will find that when you trust yourself, other people will catch on and trust you too. Being trustworthy and being known for being trustworthy is a great asset. Then the day came when Joseph was caught in a difficult situation. He refused to compromise in his integrity. As a result of a false accusation by his master's wife, he was unjustly imprisoned for 13 years. Did he complain? Did he weep? Did he wail? Did he shake his fist at his God? How would you feel if you were imprisoned unjustly for 13 years? Take a slice out of your life right now of 13 years. Would you recover if during all that period your treatment had been unjust? But he was proactive. He didn't dwell on the injustice of the matter. He worked on his circle of influence, on being instead of having. And soon he was running the prison, and eventually the entire nation of Egypt, second only in command to Pharaoh. Covey says, I know this idea is a dramatic paradigm shift for many people. It's so much easier to blame other people, to blame your conditioning, to blame conditions for your stagnant situation. But we are responsible. We are response-able. We are capable of responding if we want to. And the fire of that will is the withdrawn sling, ready to let go of that full force of our determination. That is where we stand as chelas of the Lord of the first ray. We are able to respond, we are able to control our lives and to powerfully influence our circumstances by working on our being, our beiness, what we are, who we are. That is where we have to begin. Only we can define our identity. God has defined our identity first. We must define it second. And if we are smart, we will second his motion and become what he intended us to be. Covey says, if I have a problem in my marriage, what do I really gain by continually confessing my wife's sins to her and everyone else? By saying I'm not responsible, I make myself a powerless victim. I immobilize myself in a negative situation. I also diminish my ability to influence her. My nagging, accusing, critical attitude only makes her feel validated in her own weakness. My criticism is worse than the conduct I want to correct. How many times have I heard chelas on the path tell me that they were justified in getting angry, justified in criticizing, condemning, and judging because the situation and the actions of a certain person warranted it. That means you can become now the arbiter and decide when it is and is not appropriate to condemn and criticize and judge. And whatever is the limits to your tolerance of other people's actions, you will decide when you can let that fuse go off. So you see, there really is never an occasion when criticism, condemnation, and judgment is ever justified. constructive suggestion where it is asked for, fine. But the greatest response to any behavior is always the good example, the wise example, the listening example, the teacher. My ability to positively impact the situation withers and dies. If I really want to improve my situation, I can work on the one thing over which I have control, and that is myself. I can stop trying to shape up my wife and work on my own weaknesses. I can focus on being a great marriage partner, a source of unconditional love and support. Hopefully, my wife will feel the power of a proactive example and respond in kind. But whether she does or she doesn't, the most positive way I can influence my situation is to work on myself, on my being who I am, expanding and unfolding the flower of my potential, and then using it to support others in the same process. There are so many ways to work in the circle of influence, to be a better listener. Can't we all be better listeners? So often you see when you are talking to someone, they are not really listening. They're just waiting for you to stop so that they can tell you what they want you to hear. To be a more loving marriage partner. To be a more loving marriage partner is to remember that as the years go by, we still must nourish the flame of love and of caring and doing little things for one another, nurturing, bringing joy and happiness, especially when people are serving together in the tensions of a high-powered career, a lifetime assignment, a full-time job, disseminating the teachings of the Ascended Masters. A more loving marriage partner, to be a better student, to be a more cooperative and dedicated employee. Sometimes the most proactive thing that we can do is to be happy and just to genuinely smile. Happiness, like unhappiness, is a proactive choice. There are things like the weather that our circle of influence will never include. But as proactive people, we can carry out our own physical or social weather with us. We can be happy and accept those things that at present we can't control, while we focus our efforts on the things that we can. It is almost a relief to the psyche to accept the inevitable that there are a multitude of things in this world over which we have no control, and then to remember that God has control over all of them, and that through intercessory prayer we can call upon Him to take control and command of those things over which we have no control. So there is a vector here of the line being drawn to God, and then the line coming down again to that place on earth where we have directed prayer. We put the matter in God's control, and then we see action, and we are happy to have been His partner in the results. Habit 1, be proactive. Take initiative, take action, and take it with thought. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. If you're going on a trip and you have a map in front of you, you look at where you are, you look at where you're going, and you look at the shortest distance or the best way of getting there, the best roads. You simply don't start out without a goal. That is how every day of your life and your entire life must be. Before you begin, have the end in mind. Habit 2 involves principles of personal leadership. To begin with the end in mind is to use the image or paradigm of how you want to be remembered at the end of your life as the frame of reference by which everything else is examined. What will I have accomplished? Will I be remembered at all? Will I have fulfilled my reason for being? The word paradigm comes from the Greek. In a general sense, it's the way we see our world. It's our frame of reference, our point of view, our way of perceiving, understanding, or interpreting. By keeping in mind what really matters most to you, you focus your awareness on where you are going. You better understand where you are now, and you take steps in the right direction. According to Covey, all things are created twice. Habit 2 is the first creation, the mental blueprint. The mental blueprint. Conscious creation requires imagination. You can't create a thing if you can't see it. Imagination and conscience. Conscience tells you whether what you are creating is right or wrong, whether it will better yourself and society, whether it will bring good to people. Imagination and conscience are the handmaids of conscious creation. Covey says that the second creation, what brings the blueprint into the physical dimension, is habit 3. Habit 3, begin with the end in mind. The key to beginning with the end in mind is to develop a personal mission statement. A personal mission statement. It's like forming your most definite major purpose under the Napoleon Hill framework. Covey puts it this way: your mission statement becomes your constitution, the solid expression of your vision and values. It becomes the criterion by which you measure everything else in your life. Everything else in your life is measured by your mission as stated in your constitution. Writing or reviewing a mission statement changes you because it forces you to think through your priorities deeply, carefully, and to align your behavior with your beliefs. You have a sense of mission about what you're trying to do, and you are excited about it. Covey tells the story of Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist who survived the death camps of Nazi Germany. Frankl accepted his freedom to choose his response to his circumstances. He continually projected himself into a brighter future. He began with the end in mind. He visualized himself lecturing to his students after his release from the prison camp, sharing with them the lessons he was learning during his torture. He helped many fellow prisoners to find meaning in their suffering and dignity in their death camp existence. Frankl said that we detect rather than invent our missions in life. We detect. It's all there inside of us. It's a tightly wound coil. We have to find it out. We have to detect it. We have to find out what it is. Then we have to bring it forth. Just like the little child in the Montessori classroom, the little child who discovers who he is inside by what is in his environment, but by that very special exercise that makes him understand something more of himself. This is why every single exercise in the Montessori classroom affects the child in a way that that child knows himself better for the exercise. This is why the child loves the exercise and does it over and over and over again through the cycles of bringing into form, the cycles of creation, until he has become the exercise. He has realized its object. He is it. He goes on to the next one to discover in wonder another part of himself. He is putting the parts of his house together, and his soul, through that, can magnify the Lord, because the soul is intact. The soul is being made whole by this contact with these magnificent and scientifically designed exercises and equipment that Maria Montessori has given us for the classroom. Frankl said, "Everyone has his own specific vocation or mission in life. The child knows this when he was born. If we have not found it, we must go within and do so. Frankl said, therein he cannot be replaced, nor can his life be repeated. Thus everyone's task is as unique as his specific opportunity to implement it. I fully believe that every one of you and everyone on earth has a very unique calling. When you find it and you are in it, every once in a while when you take a breath from the all-consuming joy of your labor and your mission, you look around and you see that there really is no one else who can do your job. No one else quite like you. No one else who is so needed in a particular job, in a particular calling, in a particular place with particular people, all ordained by God. One of the tragedies that happens to people in life is that they lose the concept of the uniqueness of their mission, and that they are unique to so many people whose lives they touch every day. This often comes because of a sense of absence of self-worth, psychology that is not good, that gets in the way of fulfillment. And when things get tough, they don't want to get tough with those things. They back off and say, enough is enough, these are my limits, I'm not going to push on and put up with these people or this situation or this absence of cooperation or raw materials that I need. It's for want of knowing that if you have a mission and you are in your place, there will be opposition. It will be hard. God will give you as much resistance as you need in order to be creative. And without being creative, you can't fulfill your mission. And so you can't be limp. You can't be without strength. You can't be without will. And the amount of force that you have to apply to your mission to be totally creative, to realize it, is the amount of force of karma coming upon you, of initiation from God, just enough pressure so that there will be a melting of the elements and an alchemy in your being, and the fire of God can then burn on the altar of yourself. No mission is a mission unless it is hard, unless you sweat blood and tears, unless you put in long hours. No one has ever fired the magnificence of the paintings, the art, the architecture, science, invention, and the builders who have built the magnificent bridges and tunnels and amazing structures that we see in this society and from the ancient days of Atlantis. And think of the sweat that went into the building of the pyramids, or of the Hebrews as they were under Pharaoh and under their taskmasters. What was God doing, allowing people to be under such intensity of work? He was moving them to the place where they preferred him and his creative powers than all of these things. He was moving them to the place where they could transcend themselves, and they could discover through a dedication and a mighty work that they could become more of who he was and who they were in one place. Something has gone wrong in the earth. Socialism, communism, more and more handouts from the government, more and more demanding, do something for us, do something for us, do something for us. The value of this pain, this heartbreak, this pressing on, this pushing through, this knowing that if you don't surrender to your highest self and highest purpose, you will fail. That has to be inculcated into our children, into ourselves. You cannot sit back and look at people who are a success and think that you are excluded from the circle. You just have excluded yourself, that's all. Because our books and our classrooms haven't taught us what it really takes to reach this pinnacle of being, lifetime after lifetime. This is what this particular habit is all about. Begin with the end in mind. Know what that end and goal is, and then give all of your life and your heart to it. Give everything you have to it. so that when you get there, and you will in time and space, you can look all the way back and say, I am who I am today because of the decisions I made. And you will remember those decisions as the turning points in your life, and you will know when and where and the day and the hour when you defied the oppression of your own unconscious, your own carnal mind, your own dweller on the threshold, and you said, not so. I in God and God in me is greater than all of this. I will not take no for an answer, and I will push through. I will push through. Frankl said, ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather he must recognize that it is he who is asked. The world is asking you. Your soul is asking you. You are on the line to declare the meaning of your life. And you must pray and work till you find it. How do you find it? You always take the nearest human footstep in the best and rightest direction you know, in the most constructive serving and giving of yourself, and then pray to God to keep leading you in the way that you should go until it becomes absolutely clear. The worst thing you could ever do is idle and sit there month after month and year after year and say, well, I've never quite figured out what my divine plan is. What should I be doing with my life? The answer is you should be doing something constructive, and doing it well, because you will be led to the next something that you should be doing. It is a question of following the inner path of your own footsteps and remembering that you do not have 100% freedom to choose everything in your life because you have made prior choices. And those prior choices have caused you to create negative karma, which limits you and demands that you are at a certain place at a certain time to balance that karma. But you have also made choices for positive good. That's the wind in your sails, and when you feel that strong wind, you take it, because your momentum is coming through from your causal body. And then the winds die down, and there you find yourself, perhaps in the shallows. And at that point, you have to prime the pump. You have to say, here I am, what do I do in these shallows? So you do something that you know is constructive, will bless life, something that you do cheerfully, joyously, lovingly, and that you know, because you know the law and the science of karma, is the process of balancing karma. And you invoke the violet flame along with it, and by you find that that karma is past. It's the steady, daily, plodding service that has its bright and creative moments, its hard work, its joys, its disappointments, its trials, its errors, its mistakes, learning from them, doing it again, and having succeeding victories because you've learned from so many past actions. You need to be on the move. You cannot stagnate. You have to be doing something. So you do the nearest thing you can see that is right for you to do, proceeding with caution in business and good sense and discernment, and being careful not to jump at schemes without totally investigating the schemes and the people who are coming to you with those schemes. Every step you take is either karma balancing or karma making. So you be careful with the steps you take. Frankl says, in a word, each man is questioned by life, and he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life he can only respond by being responsible, capable of responding and responding. Covey gives a practical example of how to apply the second habit, begin with the end in mind. He writes, in developing our own self-awareness, many of us discover ineffective scripts, deeply embedded habits that are totally unworthy of us, totally incongruent with the things we really value in life. Habit 2 says, we don't have to live with those scripts. We don't have to live with those scripts coming out of the subconscious, coming out of past records that are not at all like we are today. We are responsible to use our imagination and creativity to write new ones that are more effective, more congruent with our deepest values, and with the correct principles that give our values meaning. Principles give values meaning. Suppose, for example, that I am highly overreactive to my children. Suppose that whenever they begin to do something I feel is inappropriate, I sense an immediate tensing in the pit of my stomach. I feel the defensive walls go up. I prepare for battle. My focus is not on the long-term growth and understanding, but on the short-term behavior. I'm trying to win the battle, not the war. I pull out my ammunition, my superior size, my position of authority, and I yell or intimidate, or I threaten, or I punish. And I win. I stand there victorious in the middle of the debris of a shattered relationship, while my children are outwardly submissive and inwardly rebellious, suppressing feelings that will come out later in uglier ways. Now, if I were at my funeral and one of my children was about to speak, I would want his life to represent the victory of teaching, training, and disciplining with love. Disciplining over a period of years rather than the battle scars of quick fix skirmishes. I would want him to remember the times he came to me with his problems and concerns. I would want to have listened and loved and helped. I would want him to know I wasn't perfect, but that I had tried with everything I had. And that perhaps more than anybody in the world, I loved him. The reason I would want those things is because deep down, I value my children. I love them. I want to help them. I value my role as their father, but I don't always see those values. I get caught up in the thick of the thin of things. The thick of thin things. What matters most gets buried under the layers of pressing problems, immediate concerns, and outward behaviors. I become reactive, and the way I interact with my children every day often bears little resemblance to the way I deeply feel about them. Because I am self-aware, because I have imagination and conscience, I can examine my deepest values. I can realize that the script I'm living is not in harmony with those values. And I can change. I can change. We have the alchemy of change within our hearts. It's the spark of immortal life. We have the alchemy of change in the gift of the violet flame, in our teacher, Saint Germain, who teaches us the alchemy of self-transcendence. We can transcend the former state and move on. We, because we are sons and daughters of God. I can live out my imagination instead of my memory. I can tie myself to my limitless potential instead of my limiting past. I can become my own first creator. To begin with the end in mind means to approach my role as a parent, as well as my other roles in life, with my values and directions clear. It also means to begin each day with those values firmly in mind. Then as the challenges come, I can make my decisions. I can make them quickly because my values are in place. I know what I base my decisions on, and I have experience at making good decisions based on principles, values, character, and having probed the levels of my being and my psychology, I can act with integrity. I don't have to react to the emotion, the circumstance. I can be truly proactive, value-driven, because my values are clear. I know who I am. I know what my values are, and I am moving on. We come then to habit 3. Put first things first. First things have to be first in your life. Those things change their priorities based on events, tragedies, triumphs, situations. All of a sudden, a priority is here where it was there, because something has to take first place in our life. If it isn't already a crisis, it will become one if we don't put it first. Covey asks us to answer 2 questions. He says the answers we give will be important as we consider habit 3. Question number 1, write it down. What one thing could you do that you aren't doing now that would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life if you did it on a regular basis? What one thing could you do that would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life if you did it on a regular basis? Question 2. What one thing in your business or professional life would bring similar results? Your business or professional life. So you make one big change in your personal life, one big change in your professional life, instead of trying to do all kinds of things at once. This is like asking the Blessed Mother for one grace. When we ask for the grace, we will have to nurture it. We'll have to tend it as the rarest flower in our garden. We'll have to put it on and assimilate it. We'll have to eat it. We'll have to let it purge and purify us. We'll have to let ourselves experience the pain or the bitterness in the belly, and also let ourselves experience the bliss. Covey says putting first things first means employing principles of personal management. It's the key to the second creation, the physical creation. The first creation is the mental creation, by the imagination, by creativity. The second is the physical creation. It's the day in, day out, moment by moment, doing it. Doing it. A lot of people are mentally polarized. They confuse thinking about something with doing it. Lasting success involves both independent will and discipline. E.M. Gray wrote, "The successful person has the habit of doing the things failures don't like to do. They don't necessarily like doing them either. They don't necessarily like doing them either. But their disliking is subordinated to the strength of their purpose. If you want to get somewhere, you will do anything to get there, including things you don't particularly like to do." I was counseling a Chila only yesterday, and he was telling me of all those things that he just didn't like to do in his service. And he couldn't quite clearly see that doing those things would get him through and beyond that created self that is created by the parents, the psychological self, the self that simply says, I like being the way I am and I don't want to change. Oh yes, I would really like to be a Chila, but I don't want to change. That is what he said to me, with tears in his eyes. And he had not put together the 2 and 2 equals 4. If you want to be a successful Chila, You will have to roll up your sleeves and do a lot of things that you don't like to do. And you will look around yourself when you've moved a few mountains of doing things you don't like to do, and you look at the people that are way back there in the distance that haven't even picked up the shovel yet. And those people are failures. And if you go and interview them, they will tell you all of the circumstances in their lives that prevented them from succeeding, because they didn't have the gumption to get up and do something that they thought just wasn't worthwhile doing. There is an amazing consciousness in this world. Parents and parents of yourselves, just for the sheer self-discipline of it, make yourself do some things you don't like doing. I was telling him I did all kinds of things I didn't like doing, including sitting there and counseling him. I was just kidding, of course, because I really was loving counseling him because he really needed it, and he was so stuck in a rut that if I just didn't lift him up out of this rut and put him in a higher rut of a spiritual action, that I knew he was not going to change in another year and another year. So how come nobody ever told us how to put things together and make things work and get where we're going? Well, perhaps we weren't listening. Perhaps we weren't observing. There have been successful people throughout the centuries. All of us have had to have heard about a few of these people who have been great successes. Sure, a few of them were lucky. And that's who people like to look at, the lucky ones who just happen to be somewhere at the right time. Those are not the people to pattern yourself about, to pattern yourself after. Those are the people that you leave alone and say, praise God, they got a break. But that break was their good karma. So let them enjoy their good karma. If we are really willing to look and study people, we will see that every successful person is a formula to success. And if we really want to be successful, we'll find out what makes them tick and how they got where they were going. That's what Napoleon Hill's book is all about, and I suggest you get that book, The Law of Success. I suggest you read his other books, because he went about interviewing all kinds of famous people who were successful. And the stories in the book tell you why these people became multi-millionaires. What were the principles that they practiced in life whereby they were making good karma, putting out good energy, giving more than was expected of them, and reaping the rewards and the return. Covey says that having a mission, a clear sense of direction and value, a burning yes inside, makes it possible to say no to other things. Saying no to other things. I have said thousands and thousands and thousands of no's to other things all of my life, because I always had a sense that I knew where I was going and what I had to do to get there, and I would not let anything else get in my way. This is the momentum I have, but I've noticed that if you don't practice that momentum, you can think you have it, it might be slipping. You have to constantly be on the alert to defend your life, your energy, your time, to do what your mission is. Covey suggests creating a weekly schedule rather than just a daily schedule. Your weekly schedule should include time for what is most important to you. I have found that when you don't include in your schedule what is most important to you, it encourages negative feelings, like you're not properly nurturing yourself or nurturing your cause. What is most important to you, which means you have to decide, of course, what is most important to you. Scheduling time for priorities is fundamental to effective personal management. According to current time management theory, 2 factors define an activity: urgency and importance. Effective people stay away from activities, whether urgent or not, that are simply not important. You have to decide what's unimportant in your life, get rid of it, and don't let it waste your time. Unimportant things are big time wasters. They also reduce the need for crisis management by spending more time on preventive maintenance, preparation, long-range planning, relationship building, exercising, recreation, the important but not urgent activities. These activities contribute to our mission, our values, our high priority goals. Every one of the 7 habits is in this category. Every habit deals with fundamentally important things which, if done on a regular basis, would make a tremendous positive difference in our lives. To say yes to important priorities, you have to learn to say no to other activities, sometimes apparently urgent things. I have many people all over the world who write to me about important things, and they are important things. And I would like to reach out hands in every direction, but I cannot do that. I have to do the one thing that only I can do, and if I don't do it, it will not get done. And that is to publish the teachings of the Ascended Masters. Some people get discouraged when they tell me their plans and projects, send me a lot of letters and descriptions of what they're doing, ask me to become a part of their mastermind alliance, work with them in this project, advise them in business, and so forth. And I have to tell everyone, I cannot do this. This is your life. This is your decision. You have to know when you decide to do something that you have the determination, the inner resources, the will. I cannot measure your will. I don't know if you will fight through or collapse after the first 3 months. I don't know all about you to make your decisions for you. The path of Chilaship is that you make your own decisions. And what I give you is the tools to make those decisions. The dictations, the lectures, the teachings of the Ascended Masters, the pearls. Every week you get a letter from me, the pearl of wisdom. Some people don't read them. They miss their daily bread. They don't assimilate the word. And so they're not moving forward. They're not growing. They're not taking the dictation that was given for them for that week. I put all of my being and all of my love into editing the pearls of wisdom because I know that it is your banquet in the wilderness that the Lord has prepared before you, that table in the wilderness. So if you don't assimilate it, how will that substance, that energy grow in you, blossom in you, unfold in you new ideas? I have letters from people who read every single pearl. They say the key to getting the pearls read is to read it the moment you get it in the mail. Take it out of your mailbox. It's your priority. It's a message from the Ascended Masters. You go where you are undisturbed, you open it, you read it from beginning to end. You read it the next time, and you underline all the important parts that you want to remember and put into your prayer calls. Each time you read it, because time passes, challenges come, something else will come out. You have approximately 7 days to assimilate it, which is a process of self-creation. And then, hopefully, the next pearl is there. So I'd like to give you a story that Covey uses to demonstrate this point. The point of being able to say yes when you can say yes, and say no when you have to say no. Some time ago, my wife was invited to serve as chairman of a committee in a community endeavor. She had a number of truly important things she was trying to work on, and she really didn't want to do it. But she felt pressured into it and finally agreed. Then she called one of her dear friends to ask if she would serve on her committee. Her friend listened for a long time and then said, "Sandra, that sounds like a wonderful project, a really worthy undertaking. I appreciate so much your inviting me to be a part of it. I feel honored by it. For a number of reasons, I won't be participating myself, but I want you to know how much I appreciate your invitation." Sandra was ready for anything but a pleasant no. She turned to me and sighed and said, "I wish I had said that." Covey says, "I don't mean to imply that you should not be involved in significant service projects. Those things are important. But you have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage pleasantly, smilingly, non-apologetically to say no to other things. And the way you do that is by having a bigger yes burning inside. A bigger yes burning inside. The enemy of the best is often the good. You can't do your best when you split yourself up to do all these good things. Where is your best achievement? It is fragmented. It is interrupted. The creative spiral is interrupted. When you have a real fire in yourself to accomplish something, I have found that the best way to do it is to burn the midnight oil. And that's the way my psyche works. That's the way my being works. If I'm on fire for a book or a project, I can only sleep a few hours and I have to get up and work on it until I can no longer hold my eyes open, and then I sleep and then I get up. And that is the way I have brought forth the books I've done. If I try to do them a little bit each day on some kind of a regular routine, I lose that creative momentum, that endowment of fire to complete something. And because there are so many urgent things that come to my attention that I need to deal with, I can tell you that I have any number of unfinished projects on my shelves. One thing that I tell people so often is that it is your fear and your insecurity that makes you think that I have to know everything that's going on everywhere in this organization as soon as it happens, and that if I don't know about it on the outer, then something will go wrong. You can do much about those situations. You're in a position to be proactive and make decisions on them. But you can also appeal to my mantle at inner levels, give those 7 calls for illumined action, which are a matrix of intense determination, and that's how you should always give them. Give those calls, call to the messengers, call for my mantle, call for my presence there, and I will be there. I promise you. It is the law of my being. My presence can be anywhere you are that you need me. Just believe me when I tell you it is so. And so I will be there. Call my name and do it with determination. Demand that I come. You don't have to have me physically involved, although I might be a little bit later when I get back to my inbox and my phone messages. This is very important. Almoria once said, "Let the messenger be the messenger." If you want me to be all things to you, then there is one thing I will not be, and that's the messenger. You need to say the same about yourself. I always tell students, your mission, your life, is absolutely equally as important as mine. Maybe it's of greater importance. After all, the cycles move on. We expect those coming after us to exceed us. There may be only one thing different between you and me. I have accepted that I have a unique mission, that life depends on me, that Almoria depends on me, that you depend on me. And I feel joyous and serious about that. I don't think all of you see yourselves as being absolutely indispensable to this age, to this cosmos. Your place in this universe is held for you. And if you don't fill that place, it becomes a black hole. No one else can fill it. 3 or 5 people might try to duplicate what you might have done, but they will never be able to do it as you could do it. That's why it's so important to give children their options in the early years, so they have a creative tie to many things, and therefore cease to believe that anything is impossible to them. I was talking to someone last night who told me she's the only keeper of the flame in her entire country. I said, that's wonderful, because now you'll do it all. And that's how I was when I started on the path. There was no one else to do anything, so I did it all. And that's how you win. And then you bring in people who will do all kinds of things to enhance that initial thrust that you've taken. Keep in mind that you are always saying no to something. That's Covey's statement. If it isn't to the apparent, urgent things in your life, it is probably to the more fundamental, highly important things. Even when the urgent is good, the good can keep you from your best, keep you from your unique contribution if you let it. Even in an urgent situation, are there others who can take care of it? Usually there are, but if there is no one, you do have to leave off that mission, that most definite major purpose. You do have to run and rescue the child, rescue the situation. You do have to tend to these things. There are times when you have to say yes, and when you do in those situations, you're sacrificing a little portion of your Christhood. You're laying down your life for your friend and a little portion of your mission. But Jesus said he could lay down his life and take it again. You can redouble your efforts, regroup your forces, and continue on in the direction of your purpose. But when you are on the path of the Ascended Masters, you will make the right decision to not always say no when you perceive that that need is real and you are the only one around who can really meet that need. That is not pride. That's knowing who you are. That's knowing what your mission is, that you are there to help when you are called. Now we come to habit 4. Habit 4 is win-win. Principles of interpersonal leadership are the foundation of this habit. Covey writes, win-win is a frame of mind and heart that constantly seeks mutual benefit in all human interactions. With a win-win solution, all parties feel good about the decision and feel committed to the action plan. Win-win sees life as a cooperative, not a competitive arena. It's based on the paradigm that there is plenty for everybody, that one person's success is not achieved at the expense or exclusion of the success of others. Win-win is a belief in a better way, a higher way. Covey says that win-win starts with character and high trust relationships, followed by agreements that clarify expectations as well as accomplishment. Listen to this. This is something that keepers of the flame tend to ignore. High trust relationships followed by agreements in writing that clarify expectations. How many times do we find that keepers of the flame get into legal battles with one another because they didn't put in writing what their agreement was? They didn't follow the all-important rule to hire an attorney. Put down on paper what you're agreeing to. Sign on the dotted line. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's written correctly And when it comes to a disagreement or a misunderstanding, there it is in writing. And you're not out suing each other. Why do people do this? Well, we're all keepers of the flame. Shouldn't we trust each other? What has trust got to do with doing things right? It's got everything to do with doing things right. You do things right. And you just don't assume that this is some kind of an etheric brotherhood where everybody is wonderful and perfect and no one will be unkind or dishonest or come in and test you to see whether or not you discern the spirits and know that this person is out to get your money. You need to be careful and follow the principle that Mark Prophet taught us. Trust no man, trust God. And then you will always take the proper precautions and follow the right business procedures. The win-win system thrives in supportive systems and is achieved through a process of principled negotiation. He offers a 4-step process to arrive at win-win solutions. 1. See the problem from the other point of view. Does it take us all our life and lifetimes to do this? Sometimes it's the very last thing we learn. See the problem from the other point of view. Really seek to understand and to give expression to the needs and concerns of the other party, as well as, or better than, they can themselves. 2. Identify the key issues and concerns, not the positions, but the concerns that are involved. 3. Determine what results would constitute a fully acceptable solution. 4. Identify possible new options to achieve those results. Win-win can only survive in an organization when the systems support it. Covey gives the following example. This is very interesting. He says, I worked for several years with a very large real estate organization in the Middle West. My first experience with this organization was at a large sales rally where over 800 sales associates gathered for the annual reward program. It was a psych-up cheerleading session, complete with high school bands and a great deal of frenzied screaming. Out of the 800 people there, around 40 received awards for top performance, such as most sales, greatest volume, highest earned commissions, and most listings. There was a lot of hoopla, excitement, cheering, applause around the presentation of these awards. There was no doubt that those 40 people had won. But there was also the underlying awareness that 760 people had lost. We immediately began educational and organizational development work to align the systems and structures of the organization toward the win-win paradigm. We involved people at the grassroots level to develop the kinds of systems that would motivate them. We also encouraged them to cooperate and synergize with each other so that as many as possible could achieve the desired results of their individually tailored performance agreements. Individually tailored performance agreements. Think of yourself in a study group situation, a stumping situation. Let's say you're the leader of your study group. Let's say you're the chairman or the president of your study group. So you have a group of 5 to 10 people and you're going to do outreach. What you do is you commune before you go to your meeting. You commune with the Holy Christ self and the soul of each one. You think of how you know these people and what you know about them. What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? What are they able to do? Then you sit down and have a meeting and ask them what they perceive their strengths to be, as well as their weaknesses. You ask them what they do best and how they see themselves in this group team effort of outreach. So when everybody has put this on the table, then you talk about jobs that fit the people's ability. You don't give an expert person too easy a job, or he won't feel challenged. You don't give a person who doesn't have as many qualifications too much responsibility, because he will be overwhelmed. And if he is overwhelmed and he fails, he may likely quit because he is ashamed that he failed. So assigning a group of people to be team players and knowing who's on first base, who's pitcher, catcher, and outfield, that's very important. Leaders have to know this. And so what Covey is saying he did when he joined this real estate organization is he had individually tailored performance agreements. The people agreed to perform at a certain level and in a certain tailor-made job assignment. At the next rally, 1 year later, there were over 1,000 sales associates present, and about 800 of them received awards. There were a few individual winners based on comparisons, but the program primarily focused on people achieving self-selected performance objectives and on groups achieving team objectives. What is a self-selected performance objective? It is you. You rate yourself. You determine your strength levels, your ability levels, what you know how to do, what you can do, but most importantly, what you will to do. What you say, yes, I will do this, and I will do it well. I will do it well, and I will carry it through from the 12 o'clock line all the way around to the physical precipitation back again on that 12 o'clock line. So your willingness has a lot to do with it. Don't bite off more than you can chew. If you've never done things before, then give yourself an assignment that's hard enough to tax you and pull out your creativity, but not so hard that you will get discouraged and simply give up and say in the middle of the whole project, I can't do this. Somebody else is going to have to do it. So knowing yourself is a big part of being able to fulfill these 7 habits. And so in the second year, there was no need to bring in the high school bands to artificially contrive the fanfare, the cheerleading, and the psych-up. There was tremendous natural interest and excitement because people could share in each other's happiness, and teams of sales associates could experience rewards together, including a vacation trip for the entire office. The remarkable thing was that almost all of the 800 people who received the awards that year had produced as much per person in terms of volume and profit as the previous year's 40. The spirit of win-win had released enormous human energy and talent. The resulting synergy was astounding to almost everyone involved. The win-win spirit is planning what to do so that in what you do, everybody who's a part of it wins. Everybody wins, nobody loses. We don't have to take from someone in order to do good things for others. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Sounds like the prayer of St. Francis. Covey introduces Habit 5 with the following story. Suppose you've been having trouble with your eyes, and you decide to go to the optometrist for help. After briefly listening to your complaint, he takes off his glasses and hands them to you. Put these on, he says. I've worn this pair of glasses for 10 years now, and they've really helped me. I have an extra pair at home. You can wear these. So you put them on, and it only makes the problem worse. This is terrible, you exclaim. I can't see a thing. Well, what's wrong, he asks. They work great for me. Try harder. I'm trying, you insist. Everything is a blur. Well, what's the matter with you? Think positively. Okay, I positively can't see a thing. Boy, are you ungrateful. And after all I've done to help you. Covey asks, what are the chances you'd go back to that optometrist the next time you needed help? Not very good. You don't have much confidence in someone who doesn't diagnose before he or she prescribes. But how often do we diagnose before we prescribe in communication? How often do we prescribe our own glasses for everyone with whom we interact? Now, isn't that a cardinal sin? There is no one here who has not done that at least once, if not 1,000 times. We do tend to see through our own eyeglasses. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood, entails principles of empathic communication, empathy, feeling, understanding where the other person is. According to Covey, the single most important principle in interpersonal relations is this: seek first to understand, then to be understood. People want to be understood. They will come and talk with you because they believe that you have a listening ear and that you have the capacity to understand them. Isn't it true? Don't you pick a friend who you think will understand and identify with your problem and then go and tell that friend about it? That's what we do. So this involves empathic listening, listening with empathy, listening with a desire to put yourself in this person's place. When you can feel where the person is, then you can help him at that place. And you need to let him talk and talk and talk until you find out exactly where he is. Where is he coming from? Put yourself in that place and then attempt gently, with professional expertise if you have it, with love, to lead him by the hand out of the trap that he's placed himself in. The psychological trap, the victimized trap, whatever has caused him to be helpless in that position. Covey writes, the essence of empathic listening is not that you agree with someone, it's that you fully, deeply understand that person. Nothing will be taken from you. You will not be robbed if you allow yourself to understand someone and yet still disagree with them. You listen with your ears, but you also listen with your eyes and with your heart. Empathic listening requires a fundamental security on your part. You have to be secure in yourself, because by really listening, you open up yourself to being influenced by others. You can be carried away in a flood of tears flowing from someone else. If you are secure in the bedrock of your own reality, you can understand and allow yourself to enter someone's world without descending to that level. You can be strong to help them out of it with empathy. Covey says that habits 1, 2, and 3 help you identify your changeless inner core, the principal center, that point of that sun center of the solar plexus, the seat of the soul. And from that principal center, you can handle the more outward vulnerability with peace and strength. Remember, the first 3 habits are: be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. These help you identify your changeless inner core, the principal center from which you can handle the more outward vulnerability with peace and strength. When you have an accurate understanding of the problems and issues, then seek to be understood. Present your own ideas clearly, specifically, and in the context of the concerns and paradigms of the other person. Put it to him in his terms that he can understand. This approach increases the credibility of your ideas, and everyone benefits. Know your audience. Speak to them from where they are instead of from where you are. When we really understand each other, we open the door to creative, win-win solutions. Potential problems can be nipped in the bud. Our differences are no longer stumbling blocks to communication and progress. Instead, they become the stepping stones to synergy. Habit 6. Synergize. 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 Synergy in communication is based on principles of creative cooperation. In simple terms, synergy means that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's the principle of Napoleon Hill's Mastermind Alliance. You take 7 people apart, and they only are 7 ones. You put 7 people together in a mastermind alliance with their causal bodies, their inner Christ, their souls, their outer momentum and development, and they multiply one another. And you have an infinite capacity to tap the resources of the mind of God. So that's synergy. Communicating synergistically means simply opening your mind and heart and expressions to new possibilities, new alternatives, new options. Covey says that the key to interpersonal synergy is intrapersonal synergy. That is synergy within ourselves. This occurs when a person has access to both the intuitive, creative, visual right brain and the analytical, logical, verbal left brain. Valuing the mental, emotional, and psychological differences between people is the essence of synergy. Valuing the differences. If 2 people who value each other and each other's perceptions see things differently, they want to understand. They strive to see what the other one sees. They value the difference. This increases awareness and affirms the other person, creating an environment for synergy. Synergy is teamwork, team building, the development of unity and creativity with others. When you see only 2 alternatives, yours and the wrong one, you can look for a synergistic third alternative. There's almost always a third alternative. And if you work with a win-win philosophy and really seek to understand, you usually can find a solution that will be better for everyone concerned. Synergy opens up the possibilities for truly significant gain in creativity and cooperation. Covey tells the story of David Lilienthal and the Atomic Energy Commission to exemplify this point. After World War II, the United States commissioned David Lilienthal to head the new Atomic Energy Commission. Lilienthal brought together a group of people who were highly influential, celebrities in their own right, disciples, as it were, of their own frames of reference. This very diverse group of individuals had an extremely heavy agenda, and they were impatient to get at it. In addition, the press was pushing them. But Lilienthal took several weeks to create a rapport among the group's members. He had these people get to know each other, their interests, their hopes, their goals, their concerns, their backgrounds, their frames of reference. In a word, their paradigms. He facilitated the kind of human interaction that creates a great bonding between people. And he was heavily criticized for taking the time to do it because it wasn't efficient. But the net result was that this group became closely knit together, very open with each other, very creative and synergistic. The respect among the members of the commission was so high that if there was disagreement instead of opposition and defense, there was a genuine effort to understand. The attitude was, if a person of your intelligence and competence and commitment disagrees with me, then there must be something to your disagreement that I don't understand, and I need to understand it. If you have a perspective, a frame of reference, I need to look at it. Non-protective interaction developed, and an unusual culture was born. Habit 7. Sharpen the saw. Covey tells the following story to illustrate the importance of Habit 7. Suppose you were to come upon someone in the woods working feverishly to saw down a tree. "What are you doing?" you ask. "Can't you see?" comes the impatient reply. "I'm sawing down this tree." "You look exhausted. How long have you been at it?" "Over 5 hours, and I'm beat." "This is hard work." "Well, why don't you take a break for a few minutes and sharpen that saw?" "I'm sure it would go a lot faster." "I don't have time to sharpen the saw. I'm too busy sawing." Habit 7 is anchored in principles of balanced self-renewal. It's taking time to sharpen the saw. You. It is preserving and enhancing the greatest asset you have. You. According to Covey, Habit 7 is renewing the 4 dimensions of your nature: the physical, spiritual, mental, and social, emotional. Renewing the physical dimension involves proper exercise, good nutrition, sufficient rest, and relaxation. Renewing the spiritual dimension comes with value clarification and commitment, study, and meditation. You sharpen the mental saw through reading great literature, visualizing, planning, and writing. Covey suggests spending 1 hour a day in sharpening the saw in the physical, spiritual, and mental dimensions. This gives you a foundation of intrinsic security. Intrinsic security. Then you sharpen the saw in the social, emotional dimension by valuing the differences between yourself and others, and working for genuine understanding and for synergetic, win-win solutions in relationships. Covey says that renewal empowers us to move on an upward spiral of growth and change, of continuous improvement, if we also educate and obey our conscience. An increasingly educated conscience will propel us along the path of personal freedom, security, wisdom, and finally, power. In Covey's words, moving along the upward spiral requires us to learn, commit, and do on increasingly higher planes. This is a very important point for disciples on the path. How often have I seen people enter the path with tremendous enthusiasm? They don't want to climb the mountain, they want to run up the mountain, they want to leap, they want to spring like the deer and the elk. And this goes on for so many years. They are charging up that mountain. And all of a sudden they come to that place of the hardest rock of their inner core of resistance to God, to the path. They come to the place where their psychology does not allow them to take another step. They won't give up whatever it is about themselves that is not God. Maybe they don't know how, maybe it's willful, maybe they just haven't sorted themselves out. But they come to a place and they say, this is where I stop. And they come to the plateau. The problem is that some of these people have been on that plateau for lifetimes. Now this is a very sad day, because once people get to that plateau, then they have to defend their position. Why they're not self-transcending regularly, continuing up the mountain where the air is thin. Inevitably, they become negative. Because they are not now following the path, they have to criticize those who are following it, or they criticize the church. It's the church, you know. They will never say it's Mother or it's Elizabeth Clare Prophet. It's the church. Well, who is the church? Every one of us is the church, but when they say it's the church, they mean me. So I'm the problem, the way I do or do not do things. They have an argument with me, or they'll manufacture an argument with me. I mean a mental argument, a mental disagreement. Most of the time they will never bring it to me because they know that if they do, that the light of day will shine upon it, and that to accept the solution or the resolution, they're going to have to leave their plateau and keep climbing. We're nomads, you know. We seek no continuing city here. We're with Abraham. This happens to people, and this is why I believe Mother Mary gave us her all-important dictation, telling us that if we don't resolve our psychology, we will come to the place on the path where we will not take another step forward spiritually. Do not forget this teaching as long as you live. If you are stopped and you're not getting anywhere, you need to not only study the books I've recommended for you, you need to get in therapy with the right therapist. You need to be able to talk through what's bothering you. The problem is, most of us don't know what's bothering us. That's why there are professionals. It's lost in the deep canyons of the subconscious and the unconscious. We don't remember anymore what the pain was, what the hurt was, what the record is. It could be many lifetimes ago or this life, but we just don't know why we have this block. Covey says, moving along the upward spiral requires us to learn, commit, and do on increasingly higher planes. He knows the way, the truth, and the life. He happens to be a Mormon, but he knows the way, the truth, and the life, regardless of what religion he is in. He would know it wherever he would find himself, because it's written in his heart and written in his soul, and because Jesus has taught him. He knows what a lot of people in this organization do not know. You can't fool yourself by saying, I'm getting off the upward spiral staircase that leads to the secret chamber of the heart, and now I'm going to enter the treadmill of mechanization man. I'm going to beat the fates. I'll do a certain little amount of decrees, and I'll pay lip service to that, and once in a while I might read a pearl, and I'll come to the main conferences, and sometimes I'll go hear a dictation at church. You know, just keep your feet wet and pretend. Pretend that you're getting somewhere. Why do people fool themselves? Why don't people know that everybody else but them knows what they are doing? It is very, very sad to me. There is no easy way to get through the dweller on the threshold. There's no easy way to probe that pain of the unconscious, or to unleash the anger or the rage that might come out of it. There is no easy way to do it but to do it, and to do it with a professional. All of your reading of books on psychology is not enough. There comes a time when you have to meet with someone who is a professional, and I'll tell you why. The soul respects a professional, a true professional. The best professional is one that's really good and that is also a student of the Ascended Master's teachings. There are a lot of professionals that aren't good, that aren't in the right vibration, and that will not help you solve your problems, but probably complicate them. You ought to ask a professional that you're thinking about hiring if they've done their inner child work, or if they're in any codependent relationships. Or talk to people who go to them and see if they're in codependent relationships with their own clients. You know, there's good and bad in every trade. We have to go forward. To stand still is to go backward. And anyone who thinks otherwise is absolutely fooling himself. Covey says, to keep progressing, we must learn, commit, and do. Then learn again, and commit, and do. Then learn again, and commit, and do again. He says the law of the harvest governs. We will always reap what we sow, no more, no less. That is my end of the summary of Covey's book. Perhaps many of you have been thinking about reading it and haven't quite gotten to it. This is the core of the message. This little part is the dessert. Let's go over these 7 habits. To be proactive, where does it fall? It's the first ray of God's will. It's the ray of power. Take action. Take initiative. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. This is wisdom. It requires illumination. You may have to do some research so that you can plan your life and plan what you will have accomplished in the end, and begin where you are. That's the second ray. Put first things first. I define this as true love. Putting first things first is true love. The third ray. Habit 4, think win-win. Win-win means that you give of yourself and don't take from others. It requires a pure heart, purity of motive, purity in grace and principles, purity in the desire to put yourself in someone else's place. In fact, the purity to know that the Atman is in you, the Atman is in him. And as you take care of your neighbor, you're taking care of yourself. That requires purity. The fourth ray. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is the only way to healing. Healing in your family, healing in your members, healing in your group, your study group, your teaching center. Healing on the job. When you are the first one that decides to be the one who is going to understand everyone else and meet them where they are and help them where they are, you are going to begin the healing process in whatever situation you are in. That's the fifth ray. Habit 6, synergize. In other words, work together as a team. Get into that mastermind alliance. Recognize that your life is for service, is for ministration. And to understand, you have to come together alchemically. There needs to be a chemistry between you and everyone you are working with, everyone you are seeking to serve. That's the sixth ray. Habit 7, sharpen the saw. That's the great ritual of transmutation that leads to freedom. Keeping yourself fit and able to do all of the previous 6 habits. Sharpen the saw. This means you are always ready. You're prayed up. You have your decree momentum. You're not in a compromised position where your body is out of sorts because you've indulged yourself by wrong eating, not taking exercise, not leading a balanced life. All of a sudden calamity falls and people need you, and you don't have the strength, the will, the good health to help them. Sharpen the saw. Take care of yourself. Your Almoria's saw. He needs you. And he needs you in embodiment as long as you can, as long as you keep sharpening that saw. God bless you and thank you for your kind attention.